You know the look. I mean, we've all seen it. You're at a dinner party, or maybe you're just standing around the coffee machine at work, and someone starts talking about something hopeful.
Hmm.
Maybe they're excited about a new political candidate, or they're raving about some tech startup that's gonna, change the world. Or maybe they just really, really like the new season of a TV show. And then you see it from across the room.
The face.
The face, exactly. It's that slight eye roll. The corner of the mouth just sort of twitches up into a smirk.
All right.
And there's this heavy, exhausted sigh that just seems to say, oh, you sweet summer child, you actually believe that.
It's a very specific posture, isn't it? It's the posture of the person who believes they are, without a doubt, the smartest one in the room.
Yes, it's the specific brand of confidence that comes from being the one who isn't fooled. The person wearing that expression is signaling something very, very specific. I know the system is rigged. I know everyone is lying. I know that hope is just a marketing strategy for the naive. And honestly, it's intimidating.
It is intimidating.
Yeah.
And it's designed to be. It is, in a very real way, the armor of the modern age. We're talking about cynicism, of course.
Right, but we're going to talk about it in a really specific way today, because I feel like we live in a culture that rewards this attitude. We treat the cynic as the wise one. If you're optimistic, people kind of look at you like you're a bit gullible, maybe a little simple.
Oh, for sure.
But if you're cynical, then you're a realist. You're the one who sees the strings on the puppets.
We've somehow turned it into a proxy for intelligence. It's this strange assumption we make that if someone is negative, they must have more data than the person who is positive. If you say, this will work, you sound kind of naive. But if you say, this is doomed to fail, you sound like you've done the math.
But here is the real tension, the one we are going to explore in this deep dive, and it's a big one. Is that person in the comments section, or, that colleague who shoots down every single new initiative, are they actually wise? Or is cynicism just a psychological scar that is dressing itself up as wisdom? Is it actually just a defense mechanism that we have completely mistaken for an intellectual position?
And, I think even more urgently, what is that attitude doing to our actual physical machinery? Because as we're going to see, the cost of that smirk might be a lot higher than just being a buzzkill at a party. It might literally be costing you years of your life.
We are going to go so deep on this. We have a stack of sources today that is honestly pretty eclectic. This isn't just, a self-help book we're reading. We've got ancient philosophy. We have modern German sociology, specifically Peter Sloterdijk, who is a very heavy hitter.
Yeah, very good.
We have deep psychological profiling, and then we have some very, very hard-hitting medical data from places like PubMed, the NIH, and Tilburg University.
It's a genealogy, really. A genealogy of a worldview. We're going to trace the idea of cynicism from its birth in ancient Greece all the way into the modern nervous system.
And we have to start with the word itself. Because I was looking through the notes, and I think most people would be absolutely shocked to know that calling someone a cynic originally wasn't about calling them bitter. It was about calling them a dog.
Quite literally. The word comes from the ancient Greek kion, which just means dog. The original cynics were, for all intents and purposes, the dog philosophers.
So how on earth did we get from a philosophy that's based on living like a dog, which frankly sounds kind of nice, lots of napping in the sun.
Sounds pretty good.
How do we get from that to the modern attitude of everything sucks and nobody can be trusted?
Well, that is the journey we are on today. And the so what here is massive. Because understanding this shift, this evolution, might be the key to saving not just your mood, but your heart. And I mean your actual physical beating heart.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock way back. We're going to the 5th century BC, Athens, the marketplace. And we need to meet a man named Diogenes. Now, usually when we talk about philosophers, we picture these, stately guys in togas debating logic in a marble hall. But Diogenes, he wasn't that, was he?
Not even close. No. Diogenes of Sinope is the father of this movement, or at least he's the most famous archetype. And when we say he was called Diogenes the dog, that wasn't just some insult that his enemies hurled at him, though it probably started that way.
Right.
He embraced it. He completely owned it.
He leaned into the bit.
He absolutely did. His nickname was Kion, and he would say he was the man from God who acted like a dog. But we have to be really careful here not to project our modern idea of a dog onto him. He wasn't talking about, like, a pampered golden retriever who just wants a belly rub.
Right, he wasn't a good boy.
No, he was a street dog. scrappy, independent, alert. For Diogenes, the dog represented a return to nature and a total rejection of custom. And that is the absolute core of the original philosophy. He looked at Athenian society, which was incredibly complex and rule-bound, by the way.
Very status conscious.
Incredibly. And he saw people who were just obsessed with wealth, obsessed with status, obsessed with reputation and power. And he believed that all those things made people weak.
Weak in what sense? Like morally weak, physically weak.
Weak because they made you dependent. That was the key. If you care what people think of you, you are a slave to their opinion. It's that simple. If you care about money, you are a slave to the marketplace. Diogenes wanted one thing above all else: autarkia, self-sufficiency.
So to be a dog was to be free from all that.
Exactly. I mean, think about it from his perspective. A dog eats when it's hungry. It sleeps when it's tired. It performs its bodily functions wherever it happens to be. It doesn't worry about what the neighbors think. It doesn't worry about saving for retirement or accumulating gold. It is entirely and completely self-sufficient in the present moment.
Okay, but this is a crucial distinction we have to make right at the top. Because when I think of a cynic today, the image that comes to mind is someone who is depressed, resigned, maybe thinks life is meaningless. Was that Diogenes at all? Was he just sitting in a corner sulking about how the world is awful?
Not at all. And this is probably the most important correction we need to make if we're going to understand this whole history. The ancient cynic was not pessimistic about life itself. They loved life. They believed that happiness was available to every single person right now if you just stripped away all the nonsense.
So it was a hopeful philosophy.
It was incredibly hopeful. Diogenes wasn't saying life is evil. He was saying living an evil life, which to him meant a life enslaved by custom and convention, is bad.
So he wasn't miserable. He was
Cheeky. Oh, he was incredibly cheeky. He was basically a performance artist of philosophy. I mean, he didn't write dry textbooks or give formal lectures. He lived his argument. He used his body as the argument.
And we have to talk about the anecdotes.
Yeah.
Because the stories about Diogenes are just legendary. I mean, first of all, the man famously lived in a tub. And I want to visualize this for a second. We aren't talking about a bathtub with, like, claw feet.
No, it was a pithos. You have to picture a massive ceramic storage jar, the kind they would use for storing grain or olive oil or wine. It's a big, round clay pot. And he didn't just, keep it in his backyard. He rolled it into the Metroon.
The Metroon, what was that?
It was the temple of the Mother of the Gods, right in the heart of Athens. So this is like someone today rolling a giant clay pot into the middle of, I don't know, the Lincoln Memorial or St. Peter's Basilica and just deciding, yep, this is my house now.
That's bold.
Yeah. It's aggressive. It's a statement. He owned a cloak, which he used as a blanket and a coat. He owned a staff for walking and for defense, and a wallet for food. That's it. No house, no job, no family responsibilities, just the jar and the truth.
And the lantern. This is probably the image that everyone knows, even if they don't know the name Diogenes.
Yes. Okay, so picture this scene. It's broad daylight. The Mediterranean sun is just blazing down. The marketplace in Athens, the Agora, is packed. People are selling olives. They're debating politics, buying slaves. It's the whole noise of civilization. And through this crowd comes Diogenes, walking slowly, holding a lit lantern up to people's faces, peering at them intensely.
And when they asked him, Diogenes, you lunatic, what are you doing with a lamp in the middle of the day?
He would say very calmly, I am looking for a man.
Which sounds so simple, but it is actually such a savage burn.
It's devastating. Absolutely devastating. Because the implication is that he sees crowds of people, he sees merchants, he sees soldiers, he sees politicians, but he didn't see any humans. He didn't see anyone who was actually a free-thinking, authentic agent. He saw only obedient drones. He saw people enslaved by their desires and their social roles. He couldn't find a single free, self-sufficient human being in the whole city.
It's a prank, but it's a prank with a really deep moral point. He's essentially trolling them into self-reflection.
That's it exactly, and he spared no one. Not even the most powerful man in the world at the time. We absolutely have to discuss the encounter with Alexander the Great.
This is my favorite one. Because on one side, you have Alexander, student of Aristotle, conqueror of the known world, literally the most powerful human being alive at that moment.
The living god, to some.
And on the other side, you have a homeless guy in a jar. So the story goes that Alexander came to Corinth, which is where Diogenes was staying at the time. Alexander is surrounded by his entire entourage, generals, guards, sycophants, the whole crew. He finds Diogenes sunbathing, just lying there, enjoying the warmth.
Not a care in the world.
Nope. Alexander stands over him, casting a shadow, and says, "I am Alexander the Great." And Diogenes just says, "And I am Diogenes the dog."
Completely unimpressed.
Utterly. So Alexander, probably a little taken aback, but wanting to show his benevolence and his power, says, "Ask me whatever you want, and I'll give it to you."
This is a blank check from the emperor of the world. He could have asked for a palace. He could have asked for a city to be named after him. He could have asked for infinite gold.
And Diogenes just squints up at him, waves a hand dismissively, and says, "Stand out of my sun."
You are blocking my light. Move.
It is the ultimate power move. Because what he's demonstrating is that everything Alexander had, power, wealth, armies, was completely worthless to Diogenes. Alexander couldn't give him anything better than what nature was already providing for free. The sun.
And Alexander didn't have him killed for that level of disrespect.
No, which is what's so fascinating. Alexander was a student of philosophy. He supposedly turned to his soldiers, who were probably laughing at this old crackpot, and said, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes."
Meaning, if I couldn't be the master of the world, I'd want to be the one man who doesn't need to master anything.
Precisely. It was a complete rejection of the entire hierarchy of power. There's another story, too, about the siege of Corinth that really illustrates his view on work and busyness.
Oh, yeah.
So the city is in a total panic. An army is approaching. Everyone is running around, sharpening spears, stockpiling rocks, reinforcing the city walls. It's just chaos.
Productive panic, I guess.
Right. And in the middle of all this, people see Diogenes furiously rolling his tub up and down a hill, just pushing this massive clay pot up, letting it roll down, pushing it up again.
And when someone asks him what on earth he's doing...
He said, "I'm rolling my tub just to make myself look as busy as the rest of you."
Wow. He was mocking the very concept of their struggle, the whole war.
He was mocking the pointlessness of so much human busyness. To him, war, politics, the scramble for security, it was all just rolling a tub up and down a hill. It was meaningless activity that was just disguising itself as importance.
But there's a darker side, or at least a more provocative side, to this dog behavior too. Right. I mean, we mentioned that he would urinate on people.
We can't sanitize him. This is what Peter Sloterdijk, the sociologist we mentioned, calls cynicism with a K, to distinguish it from the modern version. It was low theory, it was cheeky, it was bodily, it was satirical. So when people would throw bones at him to mock him for being a dog, he would lift his leg and urinate on them.
Okay, if I did that at a dinner party, I'm not a philosopher. I'm getting arrested.
True. But in the context of his philosophy, it was a radical statement. He was saying, "You treat me like a dog. Fine, I will show you what a dog does. I have no shame, because shame is a social construct you invented. You are the ones who are weird for being ashamed of natural bodily functions."
So this ancient cynicism is this vibrant, active, almost joyful rebellion. It's about waking people up. It's aggressive, but it's alive. But that is absolutely not what we mean when we call someone a cynic today. If I call my coworker a cynic, I don't mean he's rolling a tub around the office to mock our quarterly goals.
No. If your coworker is a cynic, he's probably sitting in his cubicle doing the bare minimum and making snarky comments on Slack about management. He's resigned, he's bitter.
And that brings us to the really big question. How do we get from the cheeky, sun-loving dog to the depressed, fluorescent-lit office worker?
This is the genealogy part. This is where Sloterdijk tracks this whole shift.
He does, and it's a long, winding road. He argues that the figure of the cynic evolved over centuries. It started with Diogenes, this cheekiness from the bottom, the underdog barking at the king. But over time, it started to morph. You see figures like Lucian in the Roman era who used satire, but he was doing it from a much more comfortable elite position.
So it went from the streets to the salon in a way. Exactly. Then you fast forward into the modern era, and you get the figure of Mephistopheles, the devil in Goethe's Faust. Mephistopheles is the spirit who always denies. He's not barking to wake you up. He's whispering that nothing has any meaning at all.
That feels a lot closer to what we have now, that feeling of negation.
It is. But the real turning point for the modern era, according to Sloterdijk, is what he calls enlightened false consciousness.
Enlightened false consciousness. Okay, that is a massive phrase. We need to break that down. What does that actually mean?
It's the defining state of the modern cynic. And to put it as simply as possible, we know better, but we do it anyway.
Okay, give me a concrete, real-world example of that.
Right. Think about the smartphone in your pocket.
Yeah.
Or fast fashion. Or, industrial agriculture. The modern smart person knows, they have the enlightenment, that the supply chain for that phone probably involves terrible labor conditions. They know that cheap T-shirt is destroying the environment. They know the whole system is exploitative.
But they buy the phone, and they buy the shirt.
They do it anyway. That's the false consciousness.
Huh.
But here's the crucial twist. In the past, someone like Marx might have said people just didn't know. They were ignorant of the system. Sloterdijk's point is, no, today we know. We have all the facts. We've seen the documentaries. But we feel powerless to change it, or we're just too comfortable to change it. So we develop a coping mechanism.
And the coping mechanism is the cynicism.
Yes. We make a joke about it. We post a meme. We say, oh, well, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, haha. And then we swipe our credit card.
It's a split consciousness. One part of your brain follows the ideals of the Enlightenment, truth, goodness, justice. You know the system is corrupt. But the other part of your brain follows the necessity of survival or comfort or just getting by.
Exactly. And the cynicism is the bridge between those two halves. It allows you to participate in a system you despise without feeling like a total hypocrite. Because, hey, at least you know it's bad. You've signaled your awareness. You've performed your intelligence.
It's a defense mechanism against the guilt of participating in a flawed world. It's a way of saying, I'm not a sucker, even while I'm doing the sucker's thing.
And Sloterdijk points out that modern cynicism is diffuse. It's not just a few philosophers living in tubs anymore. It's everywhere. It's a mass phenomenon. It has become the default setting of modern life. You can say we are all Diogenes now, but without the courage to actually leave society. So we just stay inside society and complain about it.
That is, honestly, that hurts a little bit because it feels very, very accurate. But okay, let's zoom in from that huge sociological level to the personal level, because it's not just history, it's psychology. We have this profile, the archetype of the cynic. And there is a line in the research that really stopped me in my tracks. Inside every cynic is a disappointed idealist.
This is the key. This is the key to having empathy for the cynic, even when they're being incredibly annoying. Cynics are rarely born. You don't come out of the womb rolling your eyes at the doctor. Cynics are made, and they are almost always made from people who cared too much.
They cared too much. That sounds so counterintuitive.
But think about it. If you don't care about justice, you don't get bitter and twisted when you see injustice. You just ignore it. If you don't care about love and loyalty, you don't get cynical when you get your heart broken. You just move on. To become truly deeply cynical, you first have to have very high standards. You have to believe the world should be good and fair and kind. And then you have to be profoundly humiliated for that belief.
So cynicism is a grief response. It's a shield you put up against future heartbreak.
It's a survival strategy. It's an adaptation. The source outlines what it calls the 3 collapses that create a cynic. And I think if you, as a listener, reflect on your own life or people you know, you might recognize this pattern.
Okay, walk us through these. How do you build a cynic from the ground up?
So collapse number 1 is betrayal. This is the obvious one. Your trust is broken in a significant way. A partner cheats. A boss fires you after promising a promotion. An institution you believed in, like a church or a political party or a company, turns out to be corrupt.
Okay, so you get hurt. But lots of people get hurt and don't become lifelong cynics. They just get sad or angry and then they move on.
Right. And that's where collapse number 2 comes in. And this one is crucial. Gaslighting. It's not just that you were betrayed. It's that when you pointed out the betrayal, you were told you were crazy. You were told you were overreacting.
Oh, you're just being too sensitive. That's just how the business world works. You need to grow up.
Exactly. Or, I never said that. You're remembering it wrong. This is the part that fractures your trust in your own perception. You start to doubt your ability to read reality. And that leads directly to collapse number 3. Self-distrust.
Self-distrust. I always thought of cynics as being incredibly arrogant.
The arrogance is a mask. It's a performance. Deep down, they feel a profound sense of shame. They feel stupid for having been fooled the first time. They look back at their old idealistic self and they cringe. They think, I was such a sucker. I was so naive. And they make a vow.
I will never be fooled again.
I will never be fooled again. And that vow is cynicism. I will assume the worst about everyone and everything from now on. The way I can never be surprised. I can never be disappointed.
It's hypervigilance. And this is where we need to start talking about the nervous system, because we think of cynicism as an intellectual stance. You know, I'm smart, I'm skeptical. But what it really is on a biological level is a nervous system that is stuck in threat detection mode. Your brain is constantly scanning the environment for hidden motives. You stop listening to what people say and start hunting for what they really mean.
Right.
Oh, he's just being nice to me because he wants something from me. She's only complimenting my work to manipulate me later.
Exactly. Safety becomes more important than connection. You would rather be alone and right than connected and vulnerable. You'd rather be safely miserable than risk being joyfully disappointed.
The source also breaks down a few different types of cynics, which I thought was really helpful, because not all cynics look the same on the surface.
Right. So you have the wounded protector. That's the disappointed idealist we were just talking about. They're using cynicism to guard a very soft, vulnerable heart. Then you have the status cynic.
The status cynic. Okay, this is the one who uses cynicism to feel superior.
Yes. This is the person who sneers at enthusiasm. If you're excited about a new movie or a new album or a new political candidate, they roll their eyes. Because to them, enthusiasm looks like naivety. And if they can look down on your enthusiasm, they feel smarter than you. It's a very simple, very effective way of securing social status. I am above all this childish excitement.
And what's the third type?
The inherited cynic. This is someone who just learned it from their family or their culture. They grew up at a dinner table hearing, don't trust anyone, everyone is out to screw you. The government is corrupt, your boss is an idiot, your neighbors are spies. It's not even their own personal trauma. It's just the native language they learned.
So whether it's a wound, a status play, or just a learned habit, the end result is the same, a worldview of pervasive distrust. And this is where we have to pivot to this scary part, because you might be listening to all this and thinking, okay, so I'm a little bitter, so what? It's a tough world. It doesn't really hurt anyone. But the data, the hard medical data, suggests that this attitude is actively destroying your body.
This is where we leave the philosophy department and walk over to the medical lab. And I want to be very, very clear here. We are not talking about bad vibes or negative energy. We are talking about mortality. We have studies here from Tilburg University, from the NIH, from large-scale epidemiological data, and they all point to the same, frankly, terrifying conclusion. Cynicism is toxic, literally.
Let's start with that Tilburg University study. The headline on it was, "Broken Spirits, Broken Bodies." They found a feedback loop, didn't they? It wasn't just a one-way street.
It wasn't. There's a bidirectional relationship. So we've known for a while that cynicism predicts poor health later in life. If you're a cynic in your 20s, you're more likely to have health problems in your 40s. That's established. But this study found that it goes the other way, too. Poor health actually predicts the development of cynicism.
Which makes a lot of intuitive sense. I mean, if you're in chronic pain, or if your body is failing you in some way, it's got to be hard to stay sunny and optimistic.
It comes down to a concept they call perceived constraints.
Yeah.
It's the mechanism. When your health fails, you lose control. You become dependent on others. You can't do the things you used to do. This loss of control triggers a defensive psychological reaction. You feel vulnerable, so you put up the shield of cynicism. It's a way of saying, well, the world is a terrible place anyway, so it doesn't matter that I can't participate in it.
And then that cynicism makes you sicker, which makes you feel more out of control, which makes you more cynical. It's a vicious cycle.
It's a death spiral, really. But let's get to this really stark mortality data. The PubMed source discussing the study by Everson and colleagues, this is a classic, well-regarded study. They looked at over 2,000 men over a long period.
And what did they find regarding this idea of cynical distrust?
So they measured the men on a psychological scale of cynical distrust. The men who scored in the top quartile, so the most cynical, 25%, had 2 times the risk of all-cause mortality compared to the men in the bottom quartile.
Double the risk of dying from anything. That is a massive effect size. That's not a rounding error. That's like the effect size for smoking.
It's huge, and specifically double the risk of cardiovascular death. Your heart.
Okay, so we need to understand the why here. What is the mechanism? Is it just that the angry, suspicious thoughts are releasing stress hormones like cortisol and flooding your system? Is it that simple?
That's definitely part of it. We know that hostility and anger raise cortisol, they raise blood pressure, and they keep the body in a constant state of low-grade inflammation, which is incredibly damaging to your arteries over time. But the study found something really interesting about the pathway. It wasn't just some magic biology. It was heavily mediated by behavior.
Meaning that cynical people just do unhealthier things.
Exactly. The cynical people in the study smoked more, they drank more alcohol, they had higher BMIs, they exercised less.
Why, though? Is it just the nothing matters anyway attitude? The nihilism?
It's partly that, for sure. If you believe the world is fundamentally bleak and the future is doomed, why bother jogging? Why bother quitting smoking? If you don't trust that your actions have positive consequences, you stop taking care of the machine. But it's also the isolation. Cynical people, by their very nature, push others away. And we know from tons of research that social isolation is a huge independent risk factor for heart disease.
So you have the direct biological stress of being angry and vigilant all the time, plus the bad habits that come from nihilism, plus the lack of social support.
It's a perfect storm for a heart attack.
It's a three-pronged attack on your cardiovascular system.
Mm,
There's another study, too, the Heart and Soul study, that looked specifically at people who already had heart disease.
right. So these are patients with stable coronary heart disease. What did they find?
They found that among these patients, high hostility predicted secondary events. So having another heart attack or dying. And again, the strongest driver of that link was behavioral. It was physical inactivity and smoking.
It's like the cynicism paralyzes you. You stop moving. You stop taking care of yourself because you don't trust the journey or the destination.
And it's not just men. The Women's Health Initiative looked at nearly 100,000 women.
That is a huge sample size. That's very robust data.
Massive. They looked at optimism versus cynicism. And one really interesting finding was that they are independent predictors. It's not just that being cynical is the lack of optimism. You can be one or the other, or neither, or both. But the cynical hostility part was independently linked to higher mortality. And there was really disturbing racial disparity in the data.
What was that?
The link between cynical hostility and mortality, especially cancer-related mortality, was significantly stronger in Black women than in white women.
That raises a really difficult and important question, because we talked earlier about cynicism coming from betrayal. For many marginalized groups, distrust of the system isn't a personality quirk. It's a rational, learned response to a history of discrimination.
Exactly. And the source discusses this very point. Is cynicism an adaptive coping mechanism for dealing with systemic discrimination? And the answer is maybe psychologically, yes. It protects you from the shock and pain of racism. It keeps you alert. But physiologically,
Yeah.
it carries an incredibly high cost. That state of constant vigilance, I have to watch my back, the system is against me, that just burns out the body over decades. It's the physiological cost of chronic stress.
So even if the cynicism is completely justified by your lived experience and your environment, it's still hurting you.
That is the profound tragedy of it. The very armor that protects your emotions is crushing your organs from the inside. And it's not just the heart, it attacks the brain too. High cynicism is also linked to a higher risk of dementia.
Dementia, how does that work?
Chronic stress damages the brain over time. High, sustained levels of cortisol are neurotoxic. They damage the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory. If you spend 40 or 50 years scanning every room for threats, never fully relaxing, never trusting, your brain pays the price for that constant state of alert.
This is really heavy. It completely reframes that smart look we talked about in the intro. The person rolling their eyes at the dinner party doesn't look so smart anymore.
No, they look like they're slowly poisoning themselves. Instead of thinking, wow, they're so sharp, you start to think, wow, they must be in a lot of pain and their body is taking an incredible beating for it.
So we've covered the history, the psychology, and the devastating physical toll. But we have to talk about the social and political side of this, because cynicism doesn't just happen inside a body. It happens in a voting booth. It happens in a community meeting. It shapes our world.
This is a critical pivot.
Yeah.
Because we often think of cynicism as a political tool. We think, I'm being a good citizen, I'm holding power accountable. And again, we see this huge split between the ancient ideal and the modern reality.
Right. The ancient cynicism, the parrhesia, the fearless speech that was about holding power accountable. Diogenes was the watchdog.
The ancient cynic was the moral conscience of the city. They barked at the corrupt politicians to try and keep them honest. But modern cynicism often achieves the exact opposite. Instead of engaging to fix the corruption, modern cynicism leads to disengagement.
It's the "they're all crooks, so why bother to vote" argument.
Exactly. The system is rigged, the game is fixed, so I'm staying home.
Ah.
And ironically, that is exactly what corrupt leaders want. They want you to be cynical. A cynical population is a passive population. If you believe that change is impossible, you won't try to change anything. Cynicism becomes an excuse for inaction.
This is where we need to draw a very sharp line between skepticism and nihilistic cynicism. Because people confuse these two all the time. They think being cynical makes them a good skeptic.
It's a vital, vital distinction. Skepticism is a method of inquiry. It asks questions. Is this really true? Show me the evidence. How do you know that? But here is the key. Skepticism is open to the answer being yes.
A skeptic can be convinced by evidence.
Right. If you show a true skeptic the data, they'll say, okay, that's compelling. I believe you. But nihilistic cynicism is a closed loop. It starts with the conclusion. Nothing matters. Everyone is selfish. All institutions are corrupt. It is closed to answers. If you show a cynic the data, they'll just say, the data is faked, or the scientists were paid off.
It's a refusal to believe in the possibility of good.
And that's the trap. Modern cynics confuse their trust issues with intelligence. They think that by rejecting everything out of hand, they are being smart and discerning. But really, they're just closing their eyes. Skepticism builds wisdom. Cynicism just builds a bigger, thicker wall of bitterness.
And socially, it creates this awful self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the social feedback loop the source talks about.
We touched on this with heart disease patients, but it's worth spelling out. Think about how you interact with a deeply cynical person. They are cold, they are suspicious, they are constantly making sarcastic comments that put you on the defensive. How do you respond to that energy?
Honestly, I withdraw. I put my own guard up. I don't want to get bitten. I certainly don't offer to help them or share anything vulnerable with them.
Exactly. You give them less warmth. You don't offer them help because you assume they'll just mock you for it. So the cynic looks at you withdrawing and says, see, I knew it. People are cold. People are selfish. People don't care.
But they created the coldness. Their expectation of hostility generated the hostile response.
Cynicism recruits betrayal. It actively creates the cold, untrustworthy world it fears. It's a tragic, self-perpetuating loop. You treat the world like an enemy, the world treats you like an enemy back, and you get to stand there and say, I told you so, all while you're completely miserable and alone.
Okay. We have diagnosed the problem, and it is pretty severe. It destroys your mood, it hardens your heart, it shrinks your brain, and it corrodes your society. So how do we get out? How do we break the loop? Because it really feels like an addiction.
It is an addiction. It's an addiction to a certain kind of safety. So we need a path forward, a path to what the sources call hopeful realism. And the very first step is to reclaim your own agency.
And that starts with admitting that this safety is actually a cage.
You have to admit that you are driving through life with the emergency brake on. You are safe from disappointment, sure. But you are also safe from joy. You are safe from connection. You are safe from surprise. You are safe from life itself.
The source suggests a really powerful reframing of the concept of trust. We tend to think of trust as a light switch. It's either on or off.
Right. I trust you 100% or I don't trust you at all. And if you burn me, I flip the switch to O-off-F and it stays off forever. That's the cynic's way. The suggestion is we need to start thinking of trust as a dial.
A dial, that's a really helpful image.
It's not binary. You can turn it up a little. You can turn it down a little. You can give someone 5% trust on a small matter and just see what happens.
Yeah.
If they handle it well, maybe next time you turn the dial up to 10%. It's incremental. It's adjustable.
Okay, so let's get super practical. The source offers a 7-day protocol to try and break the cynicism habit. Let's walk through this because I think listeners could actually try this starting this week.
It's very doable. It starts with day 1. Name the pattern. You just have to catch yourself doing it. When you make that sarcastic comment in a meeting or you feel that wave of distrust wash over you when a stranger is nice to you, just stop and say to yourself, I am doing this because I am hurt, not because I'm smart.
Oof, that requires some real honesty, admitting I'm not a genius, I'm just wounded.
It's humbling, but it breaks the glamour of cynicism. It stops feeling cool and starts feeling sad. Day 2 is a body reset. Remember, this is a pattern in the nervous system. Hypervigilance. When you feel that suspicion rising, you need to consciously calm your body. Take a few deep breaths. Relax your jaw. Unclench your fists. Tell your body, we are not in a war zone right now.
You're signaling safety to your own biology.
Okay.
Day 3.
Evidence log. Your brain is currently trained to scan for threats and betrayals. You need to force it to scan for the opposite. At the end of the day, write down 3 things that happened that were kind, or honest, or just decent. The bus driver smiled at you, a coworker held the door, someone let you merge in traffic.
You're retraining the reticular activating system. You're telling your brain, look for the good.
Exactly. You are literally building a case file against your own cynicism. Day 4. 1 honest sentence. This one's hard. You have to drop the mask. Say one truly sincere thing to someone. No sarcasm, no joke to deflect attention, just, I'm really happy to see you, or that was a really good point you made, or even, I'm feeling a little stressed today.
That feels incredibly risky. If I say I'm stressed, they might judge me or use it against me.
That's the point. You have to take that tiny risk to prove to your brain that you can be vulnerable and not die. Day 5 is boundary practice.
Wait a minute, isn't cynicism a boundary? A way of protecting yourself?
Cynicism is a wall, not a boundary. A wall keeps everything out, good and bad. A boundary has a gate that you control. A healthy boundary is saying a clean, calm, no, I can't do that today. A wall is believing everyone is trying to use me, so I hate you all. Learning to say no calmly and without over-explaining actually builds trust in yourself. It reminds you that you can protect yourself without being hostile.
Okay, that makes sense. And day 6.
Micro risks. Take that dial of trust and turn it from a 1 to a 2. Let a colleague help you with a small task. Share a small, non-critical opinion and see how it's received. Ask for a small favor. See what happens. Most of the time, people will come through. And that data point matters.
And day 7.
Write a letter to your old idealist self, the part of you that you buried years ago out of shame. Acknowledge the pain they went through, and then tell them it's safe to come back out. Maybe not all the way, not at full blast, but just a little bit.
It's about moving from that vow of, I will never be fooled again, to a new vow. I am strong enough to handle it if I am fooled again.
Precisely. It's about building resilience, not avoidance.
This brings us completely full circle back to our man Diogenes, because we started by calling him the original cynic, but by the end of this deep dive, it really feels like the modern cynic is the absolute opposite of him.
In so many important ways, yes. Diogenes wasn't hiding from the world in a mental fortress of suspicion. He was engaging with it intensely, provocatively. He wasn't miserable. He called himself a king. He had his autarkia. He had the sun. He had his freedom. He needed nothing from the system he was critiquing.
Whereas the modern cynic is miserable because they are still completely trapped in the game. They're still obsessed with the status and the money they claim to hate.
They're rolling the tub up and down the hill, but they aren't laughing about it. They're just sweating and complaining.
So here is the provocative thought we want to leave you with. If Diogenes were alive today, in 2026, and you put a smartphone in his hand and he was scrolling through X or TikTok, what would he be doing?
I can tell you what he wouldn't be doing. I don't think he would be a reply guy leaving snarky comments under every post. I don't think he would be doom scrolling the news all night.
Yeah.
No, I think he'd be the only one laughing.
I think he would look at our digital lives, our obsession with likes, our outrage algorithms, our carefully curated, filtered photos, and he would see it as just another siege of Corinth. Just more meaningless business, more people rolling their digital tubs up and down a hill thinking it's important.
And maybe, just maybe, the ultimate act of rebellion today, the most cynical thing you can do, isn't to post a cynical take. Maybe it's to put the phone down, to go outside, to actually sit in the sun, to dare to be earnest.
To dare to be hopeful in a world of enlightened false consciousness, actually believing in something and then acting on it in the real world. That's the most punk rock, most Diogenes thing you can possibly do.
Stand out of my sun. It was never about hating the person who was blocking the light. It was about loving the light enough to demand it.
Beautifully put.
That's our deep dive for today. Check your trust dials, people. And maybe, just for today, try turning it up from a 1 to a 2. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.